if you're somebody who is a runner, if you're somebody who does volleyball, if you're somebody who does an activity, it could be walking outside, and it seems that you catch an injury every time you try to do it after you come back from previously being hurt. This episode is literally for you because you are not crossing this Rubicon of health that makes it so you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're basically always on edge that you're blowing yourself up.
Welcome back to Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults balancing training, rehab, family, and real life. I'm Alex Kiker, pro volleyball, father of two, and someone who's definitely quit rehab too soon. Joined by my co-host, Craig Smith. He is a physical therapist and a coach. Welcome to the podcast, Craig.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
You've been here the whole time. Oh, goodness. That was fun. We're here for episode 27, and we're going to talk about the Rehab Gap.
The Rehab Gap.
Which I have plans to just ruin this Rehab Gap for myself this week, and so I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit today.
I don't understand how you make terms that when I say them, they sound normal. When you say them, they sound weird.
Which one?
Rehab Gap. I don't know how you just
The Rehab Gap.
You're going to ruin the Rehab Gap. Really, there's three terms that I'm interested in describing: the Rehab Gap, the Rehab Standard, and the Therapeutic Gap, because I'm obsessed with operationalizing terms, and I force everyone around me to use words I like.
All right. Well, I've started to use them too, so you rubbed off on me, unfortunately.
Awesome.
Anyway, we're going to kind of talk about why people stop their rehab too soon. So I have a lot of questions, but I'll try and stay on task today. So we're going to start with the Rehab Gap out of those three that you mentioned, and where most people stop.
I would suggest that the vast majority of people who go through rehab that have to deal with recurrent injuries, they suffer from the Rehab Gap, which is where your pain and your symptoms are gone. They're no longer bothering you. You feel like you're 100%. And then you go back to your normal lifestyle, and then you immediately get hurt again, or your symptoms all come back. The Rehab Gap is that you actually never got your tissue capacity to be equal to your exercise and activity capacity. That difference means that you drove yourself right back into another injury cycle.
And I'm about to test this theory this week.
Yes.
Because my knee has been my kind of most prevalent injury over the past 2 or 3 weeks. And it's, I'd say, probably 90%. Like, not every single thing is gone, but it's in a place where I was feeling really good yesterday and wanted to progress my activity. Decided to hold off, but I am planning on using my knee on Tuesday this upcoming week. And we'll see how it goes.
Hopefully, we go over some things that are useful for Alex with this endeavor of him hopefully crossing over the gap and going right into purely training exercise capacity. If you've been a listener to this podcast for more than a single episode, you know that Alex has a history of not making it past the gap.
Yeah, and I wasn't using these operational terms before, but yeah, this one hits close to home for me today. I can speak from my own experience, but why do so many people quit rehab early?
Well, I mean, number one, our healthcare system's not built for it. If you do use insurance and you go to a physical therapy clinic, or if you're at our clinic, I don't think we have this issue as often, but you typically will not be scheduled. If you're trying to show no symptoms, right, you've made it, you're now good. But we know there's this vulnerability to the body that's still there. And our system, our healthcare system is not set up to help people actually cross the rehab gap. You typically are almost forced to discharge somebody too soon. I think that's the number one issue. Number two issue is that there's no link that I think happens between people understanding that their symptoms, like their pain being gone, doesn't mean that the problem is gone. The symptom's gone, but the true issue is not gone. And you need to make sure that you fully close the loop on that. So I think that there's a human nature aspect to it of, okay, I'm done with making these adjustments in my life. I'm ready to go back to just my normal lifestyle. I think those two things in combination make it so that people are really prone to this. But if you've lost the signal, if you've lost the feedback loop that tells you your body's not ready, you're going to assume you're ready. And I think it's natural to go, okay, I'm ready to proceed with my normal activity.
That's exactly where I am right
Yeah.
now. I feel like I'm ready to max jump, and so I'm gonna max jump this week. Haven't max jumped in 2 weeks, and I'm over here tweaking for it. So
Well, I've told you the worst thing is tweakers. Next worst thing are people who have a high exercise capacity relative to their tissue capacity, right? So
yeah,
it's such a common problem, but the people who have a higher exercise capacity, this part is just so hard. This gap is so hard to cross if you have spent your life being physically active.
and until we talked about it today, I didn't realize that I am in the middle of the rehab gap currently. I don't even think I'm to like the 100% symptom free, and I'm already ready to progress, and I'm going to progress against your direction.
See how persuasive I can be today. I I like that he hurts himself, but that's my life.
Yeah, um, and so I basically never crossed into the next phase where I'm at full capacity with my knee specifically. Is that kind of where I am?
Yeah, I, I would suggest that most people who have a high exercise capacity, they never realize that they're never crossing it. I mean, the one that I always look towards, if you remember, do you remember Dwayne Wade, where they always talked about his knee?
Yeah.
And with Dwayne Wade, I remember specifically thinking about his rehab. Dwayne Wade was an NBA basketball player, freak athlete, just a really good player. And he kept on getting these injuries to his knee where he was having recurring, to me, it looked like recurring traumatic synovitises, but they kept doing meniscectomies on it. So they were cutting out part of the meniscus. And my brain kept on going. They never stress test this person's body so that he could handle what was going on. So he was either missing extension, didn't have full quad strength, was either dealing with joint effusion or hadn't gotten full knee flexion. So, like the four things, if you guys go back a few episodes where we talk about what's needed for a healthy knee, that never happened. They kept on going, well, let's do a little bit of surgery so he doesn't have pain. So he lost his feedback loop. But let's never actually cross the gap to where he's not going to have another recurrent injury. He is the poster child for a horribly rehabbed person. And that is so common if you're somebody who's a runner, if you're somebody who does volleyball, if you're somebody who does an activity, it could be walking outside. And it seems that you catch an injury every time you try to do it after you come back from previously being hurt. This episode is literally for you because you are not crossing this Rubicon of health that makes it so you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're basically always on edge that you're blowing yourself up.
So, and I just want this for my own clarity. From your perspective, I probably should not go back to jumping and should get to a much higher, let's just call it a knee capacity before returning? Or is it that I continue doing rehab while still being able to perform my athletic activity?
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying don't do the activity. I'm saying you should have clear key signs, clear tools that are telling you if you're overloading it, because right now pain may not be the one that does it. So to cross the gap doesn't mean to avoid activity. It means that every activity you do that has a potential for setting you back, you have a clear game plan around. But absolutely not. I'm definitely not saying don't go play.
Oh, okay.
Not at all. What I'm saying is you may have a jump count that you want to monitor. You may need to test your knee for joint effusion, full knee flexion, and pain before each match. You may have a routine that you spend way more time on your warm up and way more time on the cool down because your tissue capacity is still your biggest limiter, not your exercise capacity.
Okay. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that.
Yes.
I was actually surprised by that answer. So.
Yeah. No, I love when people are in this phase because you can actually get to a very, very high level. Because if you think about it, the idea is that you're trying to match your tissue capacity to your exercise capacity. So when you're going through this phase, you're getting to the point where it feels like you're almost max on both.
Yeah.
So we should be very close. And it can take months and months. It can take years to really get through it. But you always want to know when you haven't passed it, you want to know you haven't passed it yet.
And we've talked in previous podcasts about not being afraid of your body. I've been afraid to use the knee, and I mean, I'm testing it at a much higher level than I probably should be testing it at, but nonetheless, like I haven't squatted for 2 weeks because of it or done normal squats. I've done some squat variations, but
Well, we can even dive into that, but I think that's intelligent.
yeah.
you probably don't want to reintroduce both. You want to control variables. If you have not crossed the rehab gap, you want to make sure that you're testing variables one at a time, and you want to make sure that you understand the volume. You can handle the volume first, intensity next. But if you're going back and you're going to play, say, this next week, I wouldn't introduce squatting yet. I would play
and then introduce squatting.
and then go back to squatting, because so
that was my plan. So,
yeah.
all right.
So there you go. So you're doing it intelligently.
All righty.
He's always judging himself.
Yeah.
This guy.
Well, you just had broken down my confidence in terms of I'm always injuring myself and doing the wrong things. So I'm very surprised when you tell me I'm doing the right things. But maybe I'm learning.
I believe in.
I doubt it, but we'll see. Okay, moving on. Rehab Standard. We're kind of talking about mistaking fitness for readiness.
Okay. The next one, so Rehab Gap, is stopping your treatments and everything too soon and assuming that you're now working on your exercise capacity with tissue capacity still an issue. The Rehab Standard is a term that our team uses to just make it very clear if somebody is targeting tissue capacity or if somebody's targeting exercise capacity. When you're on the Rehab Standard, you are targeting a tissue capacity, which means a good workout is judged by you having a good tissue response and a good tissue response level, not that the workout felt hard to your exercise capacity.
Okay.
And it's just, the standard is different. So I judge a good workout when somebody is really targeting tissue capacity, that they have the response that they want to their tissue. So we don't want a pain increase. We don't want a swelling increase. We don't want a negative response to a key sign. And if you remember, all a key sign is it's a feedback tool that can tell you if something was well tolerated by the body or not well tolerated by the body. And if you have a negative response, it doesn't matter if that workout felt hard or easy. That doesn't matter, because I don't care about your exercise capacity. All I care about is that your tissue capacity was what was targeted and handled it well.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the Rehab Standard. That is not the Rehab Gap. That is the Rehab Standard. And when you're in the Rehab Standard, that's how your workouts, that's how you should judge your workouts, not on the intensity, not on how much you sweat, not on the variety of the exercises. All of these things that we'll have people come in who they really care about exercise being entertaining. I don't care about exercise being entertaining if your body can't handle any of the exercises you're doing.
I was actually thoroughly surprised that I did break a sweat during some of my quote unquote rehab workouts these past 2 weeks, which I think is an added benefit, but like that was not my main focus.
Yeah. I mean, you know what I do? I deal with a lot where individuals want to try new exercises when they don't own the movements, the basic movements. And I think that is one of the significant issues in fitness influencer culture, which, I did recently saw my first fitness influencer when we were up at a hotel in Phoenix. And first, the person looked stupid, and I'm going to throw that out there. They looked dumb, and it was really irritating to watch. And the exercises they were doing were ridiculous, and it didn't improve their exercise capacity, one. But two, if you're searching for new and different exercises, but your body already has a bad response to the workouts you're currently doing, it's just such a basic mistake that you'll never cross into exercise capacity training alone. You're always going to be basically trying to overcome your body's bad response to exercise.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just went on a little rant there.
I did. Just watching it was, and then this person left all their equipment everywhere too. I wish I had something just to chuck at them. They were so irritating. They left this huge mess for this person to come back and clean up. What a tool.
You're going to be okay, Craig.
I will.
You're going to be all right.
So unlikable.
So back to the Rehab Standard. How does that play into this Rehab Gap that we're discussing?
If you haven't crossed the gap, you're in the Rehab Standard, which means that, so for you, for example, the idea when you're doing this is that you're training your tissue capacity, not your exercise capacity. So you should be monitoring key signs. You should be making sure that your body's having a good response, not trying to only focus on your exercise capacity. I'm not saying that you can't do the work around technically playing. We don't want him to get rusty. We want him to still be keeping some of the sharpness, but we're going to judge it as a bad afternoon, even if he plays really well. From the Rehab Standard, the idea is his knee doesn't swell, his knee doesn't hurt. We don't want to see any loss of motion. We want to make sure that the knee handled it well, because the biggest issue for him getting back to playing volleyball is going to be his injuries. It's not his ability to play.
Got it. So I guess that's that's a good segue to the signs that you're not ready to cross the
Yeah,
gap.
I do like that. You know, our team has talked about steps when we think about each phase. And so I know I say the phases a lot, but phase one for our team is diagnostics and home plan development. Phase two is symptom stabilization. Symptom stabilization is basically getting your day-to-day activities that you do to make sure that they stay at the same level of symptoms or even go down, and also that you can manage your own flare-up. Phase three is where we really start to target tissue capacity relative to exercise capacity, and we're trying to get those to match each other. And so when we get into phase three into phase four, that's where the rehab gap happens. Yeah. So to me, there's some pretty really clear signs that we use. We call them steps. So first one is key signs. So once again, key signs is just a feedback loop. You know what they are, and they're improving, and you have more control of them. Two is that you have an increased tolerance for activity, and so volume and intensity when you're doing the activity, and you're not getting a delayed flare. I feel like I'm throwing out a ton of terms today,
That's all right.
but if you remember in our three capacities, we have one that's called tissue response level. So a delayed flare could be, for us, we call it level 4 or 5. A delayed flare could happen 12 hours. So like the next day after you do the workout, up to 72 hours. That's a level 4. And a level 5 is you have a flare up that happens at the end of a cumulatively of a week. For him, if you say he plays, say he has 3 workouts where he lifts and he has 2 games that he plays, none of those actually caused an issue, but then at the end of the week, along with his work week, he now starts to feel achiness on Saturday morning when he wakes up. That would be like a level 5. And the big idea on that would be the correction is not, oh, that last workout was the bad thing. No, it was the cumulative load. And so what he may want to do is, hey, I got to play volleyball. So I'm going to take out one of those lifting sessions. Let's see if my body can handle those 4 sessions together the next week. Next week he goes through and he has no bad response at all. Okay, cool. I know that my tissue can handle these 4 workouts during the course of the week.
And my splits right now have been just generally, I mean, really for as long as I've been able to lift upper body since breaking my wrist, it's been upper and lower. So I'll do upper body, lower body. So lower body this week has been all really just focused on rehab. And I have introduced some new exercises, but they're very specific towards knee rehabilitation. And then I've implemented way more upper body days just to kind of take some time off from jumping and
Those
other
are
things.
intelligent
So
changes.
yeah. So I think, I mean, I'm probably in that like step 5 or phase 5. I can't remember which one you used specifically, but I had a six days in the gym this week. Pretty stressful week at work, and like but Friday was like, I kind of feel blown up today. And even my daughter was like, Daddy, you need a rest day. Can Friday be your rest day?
Oh,
like, yeah, I guess.
that's actually really cute.
Yeah.
So you had 6 workouts.
This week, yes.
So then and then you just felt symptoms today.
Yeah.
So level 5, that to me, completely level 5 for tissue response level, which indicates if I were in your shoes, I would take down the volume. So I'd take one of the workout days off the books, but you are also going to be throwing intensity in this week. You're going to be actually playing.
Yeah.
So then I would, if I were in your shoes, I would take down 2 volume days. So I would take off 2 of the workouts, and you're going to have the increase in intensity, and let's see how your body responds, because you know that if you do 6 plus one of the 6 is more intense, you know you're going to have a bad response. Like that's the way you kind of play with it. So now it's not that he's not going to play it. It's that, okay, I'm planning my week out. He's going to take 2 of the workouts off. He's going to have one day that's going to be more intense. There's going to be 4 workouts for this coming week. And then we want to see that he has a good response at the end of the week.
Nice.
Right?
So let's talk a little bit more about phase 3 completion. I think we had started to dive into it there with a couple of the items. I know you've got kind of like a checklist that you use to know people once they've gone through the building of their tissue capacity and are ready to move on to their exercise capacity. But what else have you not covered there?
Yeah, so we hit the key signs. We hit just that you're tolerating more volume, intensity without a flare. Last one is that your home plan is starting to include progressive loading strategies. All that means is that you're doing more and more stuff to it. You're not just basically staying static and doing no extra tissue capacity building. You really want to also be introducing the real life triggers, the things that blow you up. You want to get those back into your normal routine and show that you can tolerate them. You don't want to end phase 3 and actually not be doing the things you want to be doing, right? So during the course of rehab, we look for things called triggers, and triggers are anything that you do in the course of the day that will irritate your tissue capacity and lower it. And it literally can be anything. It can be very dependent on your own daily life, your own previous injury history. So it's impossible to know everybody's triggers, but you work through them and you figure them out during the course of rehab, and you'll take them out systematically. You don't want to take all of them out, which is like stupidest advice that we see is somebody will have pain with something, and instead of intelligently removing the things that allow for the body to start to heal, they take out everything.
Right.
That's just lazy and not useful, because it's so much more difficult to get through rehab and to pass the rehab gap if we have to add everything back in. Like, that's why we don't recommend complete bed rest. So we don't lay you down and go, hey, we'll see you in 2 months. Your body just does not tolerate being physically inactive like that. And you can kind of think of complete removal of everything that you're doing as a very similar thought process. It's not that useful.
My hidden triggers have been everything from the way my legs are positioned when sitting at my desk to the height of my desk, the angles at which my arms use my mouse and my keyboard, just for, from leg pain to upper arm pain, back pain. Like, there are random things in your day that you don't even think of, that, especially if you're doing a high level of activity outside of your normal day job or whatever that looks like, that can be contributing to maybe your rehab gap or the like.
It's shocking, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
That idea, that's why you can have somebody with the exact same injury with a completely different trigger list.
Yeah. And it's changed. I mean, for mine, it's changed several times over the last even like 3 months. And I'll tweak something, and then, I might make an adjustment that flares something else up. And so it's never a perfect list.
It's dynamic. That's why I like a lot of the cookie cutter stuff where like you have these assumptions. It's very difficult because nobody's the same.
Right. And everybody has different scenarios or life situations that they're working through. So yeah, and it's also like my wrist has been a big thing recently, and this, 2 weeks of rehab for my knee, I found that, wow, my wrist feels a lot better. So like, just volleyball itself was a kind of hidden trigger. I think it was more visible for me, but either way, it's one of those things where now I know that that's one of the things. I'm in like a very long rehab gap for my wrists specifically, and probably taking some breaks in between to kind of help it rebuild some tissue capacity, and then pushing it again will be beneficial for the future. So I was able to get more than just knee feedback, even though I was kind of focusing on my knee.
Well, and it's a good point, is the higher exercise capacity is, and the bigger the difference between your tissue capacity and exercise capacity, the longer the rehab gap you should anticipate it'll be.
Right.
It will, I feel like I said that like Yoda, but it will be considerably longer, and kind of leads into what he just said with the wrist. Another one of our checklists is looking at artificial stabilization or external aids and tools that you use to be able to tolerate whatever activity you're doing. We think of those in five levels. So diagnostic is one. Number 2 is a crutch or something that basically completely unloads the tissue. 3 is a load manager or load management, so that you can control how much you use or force is actually going through it. 4 is a training aid, and 5 is a performance enhancer. And so in phase 3, we are typically going from load management to, if you are still using it, you're only using it for a training aid or performance enhancer. You don't want to have it where you're still having to use load management and then say that you're actually going on to pass the rehab gap, because you're not actually. You're still using an external tool. You're not actually through the rehab gap. So we like to see that is now switching over to a training aid, definitely not a crutch, and definitely not load management.
I'm still using the tape, so I'm definitely level 3 there.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I need it, but it feels more comfortable and kind of gives me a little bit of peace of mind, although I don't think it was actually helping a whole bunch.
Well, the way that I would start to think about it, if I was in his shoes and we're like really thinking about how do we cross, then what I would do is I would start without tape for the probably first portion of the match, and then I would tape to finish the last 2.
See how it
see
feels.
how it feels. I do this all the time for people who have posterior tibialis tendon injuries, where we will use this brace that you wrap around your ankle, and I have them start where they have the brace on, and then maybe 15 minutes into the run, I have them reduce the tension of it, and then by the end of the run, I have them take it off,
Oh,
like reduce any support. But you don't have to take your shoes off using this, and that's a way that you can basically let the brace still help you, but you're not using it to completely unload the tendon. So I'd be thinking the same thing with his wrist is, okay, start to think of how you can start to reduce that need, but still monitor that your tissue actually had a good response to the volleyball playing.
nice.
Because what I often see is people just completely take it away,
Right.
not realizing that your body was still using it. And so it's just the same thing. You're just reducing everything that's supporting your tissue capacity. You want to make sure it's clear that your tissue can stand on its own.
And I've gone from like 8 layers down to maybe like 3 layers is what I'm kind of using the
Beautiful.
last time I played. So like I have been not really strategically reducing it, but just reducing it based on need.
So think about strategically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it could be just, you could have it the whole time, but 1 to 2 pieces of tape.
Right.
Yeah. The last couple, you want to make sure that your tissue and fatigue response levels are stable. We want a clear progression plan. The biggest one, I love this phase for managing flare-ups independently. Phase 2 is where we really want to see that you're able to make yourself feel better. But in phase 3, you can have some of the most massive flare-ups because it's typically cumulative load that's going to start to make you feel worse. So you'll feel it at the end of the week. And then you almost always emphasize the most recent workout as like that was the mistake workout when really it wasn't. And you still want to be able to make yourself feel better without a rehab professional or medication or Bengay or icy hot or
Tiger
what
Balm.
Tiger Balm.
Yeah.
I was working around it. We haven't had a Tiger Balm reference in a while.
Yeah.
Without Tiger Balm being needed to be spread liberally over your body.
I will be using it this week.
See?
Yep.
See? So definitely phase 3 for this guy. But those are kind of our criteria that we like to work through just as a reminder of, okay, are we really through this tissue capacity relative to exercise capacity?
Cool. And I think those are just kind of good to go back and reference when, you're moving beyond an injury.
We'll have those lists for you guys in the show notes so you guys can look at it.
Cool. And then comes the therapeutic gap, correct?
Yeah, which we haven't mentioned yet. So we have the Rehab Gap, we have the Rehab Standard, and we have the Therapeutic Gap. They all kind of sound similar, but I want to make sure that we get them all out there because they're not the same thing. The Therapeutic Gap is an idea that when you start to feel better and you start to add triggers back in, the other thing that happens in this phase is people stop doing the therapies that make themselves feel better, like the home plan. They start to reduce the things that cause a healing response in the tissue. And so if you think of it, you're doing these therapies, you're doing it a lot when you first start rehab, and you're really trying to take out everything that can trigger it. And that's why you can have this huge improvement, this difference between these two, allow you to have a huge improvement in how your body feels. And you can have this large jump in rehab progress, right? You go from every day feeling terrible to you feel a lot better really fast. Well, what happens is everybody naturally starts to increase those things that were triggering their problem. And then they also, as they start to feel better, they quit doing the things that make them feel better. And so the therapeutic gap, the thing that actually lets you heal, gets smaller and smaller. And then at the end of phase 3, what typically happens where people stay basically in this permanent recurrent injury hell is they match their triggers to the therapy that they're doing, and they never actually get any better. They basically stay on this line forever. And that's why people will never actually get to phase 4 where they're just focused on exercise capacity, because there is no healing happening anymore. For every healing thing they do, they're adding a trigger that makes them feel worse.
For our audio only listeners, Craig had two hand motions with like ostriches looking at each other like they were puppets in bringing these capacities up and down.
I actually think the therapeutic gap is really useful too, because people will think that they have the wrong diagnosis because they're not getting better. And they'll also think it's the practitioner's fault, when in actuality it's your fault because you've reintroduced triggers and you've also quit doing your home plan. And the therapeutic gap is a responsibility of the person who's going through the injury. because you're the one that's going to have the control over the triggers. You're also going to be the one that has control over the things that make you feel better. And if you find that you all of a sudden quit progressing, you've lost the therapeutic gap. And if you can regain it, that's how you finish rehab. If you want to get through the rehab gap, you have to continue to have a therapeutic gap. And you also have to understand that your limiting factor, your tissue capacity, is the thing that you're training, not your exercise capacity.
And I think that ties into my earlier question in terms of like, should I continue rehabbing and do my activity, or should I not do my activity? And it's like, yes, do your activity, monitor it, and make sure that you're not making it extremely worse, but then also continuing your rehab. And I think I told you prior to starting the pod that, there's a couple of these new exercises that I've integrated that I'm going to continue doing even after this feels completely better. So
I love that idea.
yeah.
And I really think that when people are going through this process and they get discharged too early, because they feel so good and they haven't reintegrated and done the activities that they need to, that they know they're going to go back to. Oh my, that is such a classic mistake. And I think that's a point that you need to make sure that you fully get through and just understand our healthcare system is not built to do that. Our healthcare system is built to get it so that you basically eliminate all your triggers, even though those are triggers you're going to add back in. And if you don't add those back in, you have now built in compensations that aren't realistic for an enjoyable life.
Yeah, so much of it is just symptom reduction. It's like, taking Mucinex when you've got a stuffy nose. Like, yeah, sure, it's going to go away, but it's not curing whatever illness is causing it.
Yeah. So if you find that you're just avoiding activities, just remember that that's what you're doing. You've not actually owned the problem. You're skipping stuff. And those types of loss, I think the part that drives me crazy about that is that you basically are making people disabled. If you do that, you are making somebody unable to live the life that they want to. It is so irritating. I feel like
Thank
I'm
you for
getting on
not disabling me. And yeah,
yeah.
he's getting very escalated right now. So I got to have Craig simmer down over here. But
It's so frustrating because because you know what's funny? I think part of the reason that happens, providers, it's risky to add things back in that we know are going to hurt you, that could make you feel worse. But if you don't do that, you're basically leaving somebody who's going to basically hurt themselves in the future. And if you don't add those things that are triggering back in, that person will permanently be unable to do them, in my opinion. And it is a lazy way to practice, and it's hard. It's clinically difficult to be able to get somebody to that point. But man, once you get through it though, and you own it, and you now are empowered to take ownership for how your body feels and all the activities you do, you become very independent.
boom,
Boom.
rant over.
Thank you.
All right. So how about kind of closing the gaps?
The biggest idea is that you just understand that they're there and you're honest about it. The idea for each one of them is that you have to understand what is your biggest limiter, which capacity. So remember, we have the energy capacity, tissue capacity, and exercise capacity. If your energy or your tissue capacity are lower than your exercise capacity, you have to make sure you target those and get those into a point where they're at least equal to your exercise capacity and equal to the activities that you're going to be looking forward to doing. If you don't do that, those gaps mean that you'll never actually close them, or you'll never close a rehab gap. The other issue is that your therapeutic gap will also be lost. So you won't be able to actually make your body continue to heal. And if you violate the rehab standard over and over again, you're just going to be in a permanent recurrent injury hell. So it's just understanding that each one of those things are required for you to get to where you want to go, and don't lie to yourself.
I imagine you should probably also be testing your triggers and monitoring those, and then being able to kind of quickly reassess, and whether you're working with a professional or on your own, maybe taking a couple of step backs if things don't go the way you had planned.
I love how you said that. I think if you no longer have pain, really looking for other key signs that are related to the injury you had. So let's say you had back pain, you can do active range of motion of your lumbar spine. And if it feels stiff, you can equate that to maybe the precursor before pain, that you want to make sure you traction it before and after the activity. Say you start to feel stiffness in your knee. Well, maybe I want to do cross friction over the patellar tendon if I had a patellar tendinopathy, or I want to do quad activation, something to prep my body for the rigors of whatever activity I'm going to do. I think those are really good. I also think just even past having symptoms, say you don't have a usable key sign, 3, 4 months, depending on what the type of injury was, you still want to be doing the home plan.
Right.
Don't stop doing the home plan that works.
Even if it's just parts of it, I think that's important, that like pick out the most effective parts, or, hopefully that's based on data, not just generalities, but nonetheless, like sticking to whatever's been most effective and continuing to do that for potentially forever.
Potentially. Yeah, especially the type of injury. Joint injury, if you've had a traumatic synovitis or you've been told you have a bone on bone in your knee, you may never stop tractioning. You may traction forever, and it's going to have a really good impact on your body. So there's things that you just need to understand. Which ones are going to be permanent additions to my life?
Okay. To close out, is there kind of a quick way to know which gap you're in?
Well, you mean, yes. So if you, I would first suggest go listen to the 3 capacity podcast that we had 2 episodes ago. Listen to it and see if you fall into either energy capacity being your biggest limiter or tissue capacity being your biggest limiter. And let's say it's one of those two. I would go back through what we've written and discussed on this topic, like if it's your knee, if it's your foot, if it's your back, your hip. We've done some podcasts on those that will help you figure out tools that you can use and just really be clear on that. The next one would be find a key sign that if your pain is starting to go away, but it keeps on coming back and it seems unwarranted, you probably have a key sign that you could use instead of pain. And remember, a key sign is just something that helps you get a feedback loop on how your body is responding to whatever activity you're doing. Find a key sign that's usable. And if you can't find one, find a PT who can do it. Our team is really good at this, but we can help you get a key sign that allows you to get through your rehab gap. And then finally, really understand what is the minimum aspect of your home plan that you probably need to continue doing and what you're willing to do. So the farther we get out, you're not going to be getting a prompt to tell you to do your home plan. So you probably also want to switch it from being related to pain to maybe time-based, or do what we call a habit stack. Do it on something that you already know you're going to be doing. So before you work out, or when you're getting ready in the morning after you've had your first morning coffee, but you want something that you can link doing the activity to that has nothing to do with pain.
Yeah, that's been super helpful for me. If this episode hit home with you, feel free to go over to pastureprime.com. Craig will drop the checklist we talked about there on the website. Whether you're stuck, guessing, or just trying to do it right, understanding these 3 gaps can completely change how you recover. I think that's the point that we wanted to hit home today with.
Love it.
Cool. Aside from that, like, comment, subscribe, share, follow, give us a rating, 5 stars.
Please.
We feel like 5-star individuals, so
We would like a 5.
Alrighty. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.
PYP, baby.
Peace.